tutorial is going to cover nested for loops. Before we begin, make sure that you have Java and the Java JDK downloaded on your computer. You can run java-version in your terminal to check. Also make sure that you have IntelliJ downloaded on your computer. It's suggested that you watch the previous Java tutorials that are in this same playlist. What is a nested for loop? A nested loop is created when one loop is placed inside of another loop. Some vocab. An outer loop is a loop with another loop inside of it, and an inner loop is a loop that is inside of another loop. So outer loop is on the outside, inner loop is on the inside. Outer and inner loops. For each run of the outer loop, the inner loop will run to completion. There can be more than 2 loops included in a nested loop. You can go down as many levels as are needed to complete your goal. The inner loop test can be dependent on the outer loop. For instance, you might start the inner loop on the outer loop's loop variable, or make its test based on the outer loop's loop variable. A note: all rules that apply to a single loop apply to a nested loop. Look out for loops that never run, loops that run forever, places where you might want to break out of a loop, and fence post problems. Here's an example nested loop. This is the outer loop that goes from 1 to 3. This is the inner loop that goes from 1 to 2. The outer loop runs 3 times, and the inner loop runs 2 times. So the output would be here. So it's 3 rows of 2 stars each. You can tell that there it goes to the next row, which each run of the outer loop, because this println statement is outside of the inner loop, but inside of the outer loop. Tracing a nested for loop. Tracing a nested loop is just like tracing a single loop, except you keep track of 2 loop variables instead of 1. For each run of the outer loop, the inner loop will need to be traced completely. Keep an eye out for code that is inside the outer loop, but outside of the inner loop. So a situation like this println statement here. Nested loop exercises. How many stars are printed? What's the output? So for this one, we have an outer loop that runs 2 times, and an inner loop that runs 4 times. So since the inner loop runs 4 times, and the outer loop runs 2 times, you multiply 2 times 4 to get 8 stars. And since there's no println statements, all the stars are on the same line here. So just 8 stars in a row. How many stars are printed? What's the output? So here we have an outer loop that runs 4 times, but the inner loop is dependent on what the outer loop is. Also, there's a println statement that's outside of the inner loop, but inside of the outer loop. So the answer is 10 stars, and there's 1 star in the first row, 2 stars in the second row, 3 stars on the third row, and 4 stars in the fourth row, altogether making 10 stars. A helpful hint: when using nested loops to print out figures, the outer loop will always determine the height of the figure, and the inner loop will always determine the width. So for this next one, let me get this into split screen mode. And I want to create a new package that I'm going to call nested for loops. And inside that, I want to create a new Java class, nested for loop exercises. Okay, double click to make that left pane go away. First things first, like always, I'm going to create my public static void main with string args. And now I want to write a method that prints out the following shape: a square of stars with the same height and width. And I'm going to call that side length. And this one has a side length of 4. So I'm going to say public static void print star square. I'm going to take in an int side length. I'm going to say for int outer equals 0, outer less than side length, plus plus outer, for int inner equals 0, inner less than side length, plus plus inner. And here I'm going to say system.out.print an asterisk, because I want everything on the same row to be on the same line. But then I also want a new line for every run of the outer loop. So inside the outer loop, but outside the inner loop, I'm going to have a system.out.println. Okay, and now I'm going to call, let me open this up a little bit more. I'm going to call print star square with 4. And here I'm going to say run. And I want to do nested for loop exercises. That's running. And see, I have this square star, just like what I wanted here. So I'm going to go ahead and put a println here, so I'll have an extra line between all of my figures. And the next thing we want to do is write a method to print out this shape. It has a height of 2, because 1, 2, and a width of 4. So I'm going to have public static void print hourglass. It's going to take in an int height and an int width. So first things first, I want to print out this line at the top and line at the bottom, and they match. So I'm going to call public static void print hourglass top, and it's going to take in an int width. And it's going to have system.out.print, and then it's going to have a plus, and then system.out.println, and then another plus. And between the two pluses, I want to print out as many dashes as there are widths. So I just need a single for loop for this one case. So I'm going to say for int I equals 0, I less than width, plus plus I, and I'm going to system.out.print just a dash. So now I want to call print hourglass top with width here, and then I want to call it again here, one for the top and one for the bottom of my hourglass figure. And now I want to have an outer loop that prints for the heights for each section of my hourglass, and it's going to be based on the height. I'm going to say for int outer equals 0, outer less than height, plus plus outer, and now I want to print the backslash, so system.out.print backslash. And now I want to have as many spaces as there are widths. So I'm going to have another loop. So for int inner equals 0, inner less than width, plus plus inner. I'm going to system.out.print a space. And now after that, I want to system.out.print a forward slash, then a new line, then a backslash. For this character, a new line, and then this character. And now I want to print out 4 more spaces, or the number of spaces as there are width. So I'm going to do that. And now I want system.out.println 2 backspaces for this right here. So I've printed the top and the bottom. I've printed here with the first inner loop and here with the second inner loop. And then each of these sections will be printed with the outer loop. So I'm going to call print hourglass with a height of 2 and a width of 4. I'm going to hit play. And now I have my hourglass figure, just like I expected. Cool. So I'm going to put another println here, so that way there's a space between all of my figures. And the next thing is to print out this figure here. So I'm going to do public static void print number pyramid. And it's going to take in an int height. I think that's how you spell pyramid. You know what? I'm going to say triangle because I know that that's right, triangle. So I have a print number triangle. And here is a case where the inner loop will be dependent on the outer loop. So first thing is I want to go from 1 to the height. So I'm going to say for int outer equals 1, outer less than or equal to height, plus plus outer. Then I have for int inner equals 1, inner less than or equal to outer, plus plus inner. And now I want to system.out.print outer. And then here system.out.println to get to the new line for each called the outer loop. And I'm printing outer because each row is matches the number of the row, and then there's that many numbers in each of them. So here I'm going to call print number triangle with 5, and then another println after it. So hit play to run it. And now I have my number triangle, just like I expected. Okay. And this final figure is a collection of rows with a width. So this has a width of 5. So each of these characters is considered a spot in the loop run, and a height of 4. So 4 rows. So public static void print pluses and periods. It's going to take in an int height and an int width. So first things first, like always, I'm going to create the outer loop. So for int outer equals 1, outer less than or equal to height, plus plus outer. And the hint here is to base the symbol that is being printed in the column off the even/oddness of the inner loop. So now I'm going to have my inner loop. So for int inner equals 1, inner less than or equal to width, plus plus inner. And I'm going to go ahead and put in my println so I'll have actual new lines between each run of my outer loop for the rows. And then the inner one, I need to decide to print a period or a plus depending on the even/oddness of my column that I'm in. So I'm going to say if inner mod 2 is 1, then I'm going to system.out.print a period. Else, I'm going to system.out.print a plus. So I'm going to say print pluses and periods with 4 and 5. And I'm going to run it. And here I have it. 4 rows with 5 columns with alternating pluses and periods. And that's it for our exercises. And the practice for later is to print this tower. It has a height of 4 and a width of 3. And we should make the height and the width of the tower's parameters to the method that's being written. An important note here is that this is a fence post problem, right? Because we have different things happening on the ends here of our loops. And that's it. I hope that was helpful.